Coming up today in the Locked On Sabres podcast, we've got the Prospects Challenge roster out to talk about, which begins on Friday. Also, we'll get into the Detroit Red Wings a little bit, comparing them to the Sabres and what they did this offseason. And right before I got rolling here, something the Sabres did has made me almost really annoyed. That's coming up today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sneaky Joe DiBiase on today's show. A lot to get to. We are closing in on the season. We are 10 days away from the beginning of the Sabres preseason, obviously under a month away until the regular season, and we are only 2 days away from the yearly Prospects Challenge that is hosted down at HarborCenter. A little bit on that coming up today, and then a further breakdown on our next show where I'll go through more so the five under, of course, the top guys at the Prospects Challenge, but I want to get into more the under the radar guys to keep an eye on at the Prospects Challenge. That will be next show, though. We will go down the roster today, talk a little bit more about the bigger names. So that's coming up on today's show. Also, we'll talk a little bit about the Detroit Red Wings. So that's coming up as well, comparing and contrasting the Sabres to Detroit, who did finish above the Sabres last year in the standings for the first time in a couple of years that they did that. At Sneaky Joe Sports, you want to follow me on Twitter at Locked On Sabres for the podcast account. If you want to become a subscriber on our Locked On Sabres text line ahead of the season, where we'll be chatting a lot through the regular season during the games and whatnot. You could sign up by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. And then from there, it's all on your phone. You only got to go to the site the one time to sign up. A lot to get to on today's show. One thing that I plan on doing, if you want, you can tell me if you want it shared on the show. I've been fiddling with this idea of before and after pictures when it comes to the beginning of the Sabres playoff drought and where we are now still in the Sabres playoff drought, because I saw a picture of me when I went to a game when the Sabres playoff drought was just beginning, and I look like a child because, I'm 29 years old right now. When the drought began, I was 15 years old. So literally I was, 15, 16 years old, right around that. So text line, that'd be a good way to do it. You want to send it in. You don't have, if you want it shared on the show, you can let me know that too. I feel like that could be a fun little exercise to go through just to show how long it's been. Twitter, of course, you could do that as well. I'll send a tweet out coming up. So, lot to get to on today's show, but let's start with the news of the Sabres Prospect Challenge roster, which was released by the team last night. 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders. Now, just to go through some of the headliners that will be at this tournament, because you never know what you're going to get at the Prospects Challenge. Sometimes you don't get some of the older prospects. Sometimes you don't get a lot of the top guys that are going to college, like Owen Power didn't participate a couple of years ago. Sabres are having pretty good attendance this year at this tournament, which they will be taking on Columbus in their first game on Friday. A few other teams involved as well, but the Sabres will have 5 first-round picks on their team at the Prospects Challenge. Konsta Helenius, the 2024 first-round pick, 14th overall. Obviously going to be, I think, a lot of people's number one answer for who they want to see first. Noah Ostlund will be there, 2022 16th overall pick. Yuri Kulik will be there. Isak Rosen will be there. And Ryan Johnson will be there. Ryan Johnson, how about that? He will be at the Prospects Challenge 5 years after he was drafted by the Buffalo Sabres with the pick that they used to get Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan Johnson is now 23 years old. He will be going up against a lot of 18, 19-year-olds. So you'd expect him to look mature out there on the ice, I would think. The name I want to get to, though, here, other names, by the way, Anton Wahlberg. We'll talk more about him. He's one of those under-the-radar guys, if he's even under the radar, to get to on our next show. Second-round pick from last year. They had a great year of development. You got Nikita Novikov that's worth watching. Scott Ratzlaff is going to be the goaltender to watch for the Sabres. He's starting to have an upward trajectory. 5th-round pick of a couple of years ago. But today, I want to just talk a little bit about the first-round guys. And in particular, I just talked about Johnson this way. I think the number one guy I'm going to have an eye on, I'm not even going to be watching the puck. Every time this guy's on the ice, I'm only going to want to watch this guy. I don't care about the puck. I need to watch this guy. What are we doing with Isak Rosen? What's happening? He was drafted. This will be his 4th year of development since being drafted. All right? Guys that do not make the NHL after 3 full seasons of development. Rosen had a year in Europe and then 2 full years in Rochester, including a long playoff run, by the way, and then another playoff series the year after. So it's almost more like 3.5 seasons. Although, to be fair to him, there were ice time things before that. But his time in Rochester has gone pretty well, right? Like, he's become one of their more important players. He has matured his game, I think, in a lot of ways defensively since he arrived in Rochester. But where is the jump? Where is the jump to the National Hockey League? That is what you want to see. He is now 21 years old. He'll be 22 during this upcoming season. Let's go. Let's go, man. You're a first-round pick. You were a top half of the first round. And hockey's different than football. Sometimes the guys never get there, right? Marek Zagrapan way back when. Like, there are examples of first-round picks that just don't make the league. And I'm starting to wonder if that's going to be Rosen, if he's just going to be a guy that doesn't make the league. Tough for him to make the Sabres team, though. Right? Like, we've gone through the roster, how we talked about Peyton Krebs in our most recent show, and there's not even a spot on the roster for Peyton Krebs. So how in the world is Isak Rosen going to get a spot? Well, you do what Zach Benson did last year. You surprise them so much that it's undeniable. They don't have a choice but to put you on the team. With Zach Benson, it eventually became, well, it's kind of awkward who we got to bench here. It's kind of rough. Like, we got to bench Olofsson. They don't want to do that at the beginning of the year. What do we do here? But they did it because, well, we got to. It's a good problem to have, right? Zach Benson just arrived and he has demanded a spot. That's what I'm waiting for. Rosen to demand a spot, to tell the Sabres, you got to do something that you weren't planning on because I'm here and I'm ready. I am ready to make this team. To this point, he has not done that. At any camp, at any preseason, to me, any regular season action, the few minutes he got for the Sabres, even in Rochester, he's looked good. Has he demanded a call-up? I don't think so. So that's what I need to see from him. That begins in the Prospects Challenge. It's going to be more critical he does it in training camp, but he has to do it in the Prospects Challenge. You're going to be 2-3 years older than almost everybody out there on the ice. Now, or a lot of guys, not everybody. You have your Tyson Kozaks, you have some of these older prospects too, mixed in. But you're older than a lot of the guys out there. You were a top draft pick. You should look like the best forward out there on the ice. So he is someone I will keep my eye on a lot. Even more than Kulik, more than the new guy, Helenius. That was the answer I got a lot from our texters. Leo Komarov is also a popular answer. Nikita Novikov was one. So some of those under-the-radar guys, our texters are answering as well. Wahlberg. One texter said that Wahlberg is the guy. A couple on Novikov, though. Novikov, we'll talk more about him next show because I am a little bit excited about him. One texter says Novikov. Dude has had a great rookie year in Rochester. I think he is the exact type of defenseman they are missing on the NHL club. So more on him coming up on our next show. The thing, really quick bone to pick before we get to Detroit, and comparing and contrasting their offseason to the Sabres as we kind of wrap up the Atlantic Division here. We have one more team to talk about, Montreal, and then we're good. So, the Prospects Challenge in the middle of a 80-degree weekend. Gets started on Friday. It's going to be 83 degrees outside and nice here in Buffalo, right? The Bills are playing. Football season's just got rolling. Hockey's not on a lot of fans' brains right now, at least not top of mind. And the team, there's not a lot of enthusiasm about the team right now. There is, snark. There is anger at the Sabres right now. And Sabres Twitter is fighting with each other every day about whether there's an internal cap and the resources being poured into the team. Hey, they finally put a roof up and a new Jumbotron. They're starting to finally make some investment in the arena. All right, we got something, But the overall reputation of the Sabres right now is they're letting it rot. They're letting it sit there, and they're letting the arena crumble. They're letting the team just kind of float about and just do what it's doing, not put the money into it. That reputation is out there for the Sabres. Charging fans $11.80 to go watch prospects. To me, I guess I don't want to say I can't believe it. It's kind of dumbfounding to me, though. Come on, where's the goodwill? Where's the goodwill for your fan base? This is a token gesture, right? How many tickets are they going to sell? Maybe a decent amount, but not a lot. Come on, you want to build up some enthusiasm in the team. You want fans to come out and see the future, right? It's so tough to sell their future because the future's been sold for over a decade. I remember at the arena, and this would have been one maybe where they sold tickets. I don't remember. But different time, right? Different circumstances, different prospects. The Sabres once sold out an arena to go watch a prospect scrimmage that featured Jack Eichel before he had debuted for the Buffalo Sabres and Sam Reinhart before he had played a lot of games for the Buffalo Sabres. Remember that? 2015, Eichel arrives. They didn't sell at the arena, but it was the upper deck. There were people in the upper deck. It was full. It was 15,000 fans. Enthusiasm was through the roof at that time because it was the new era. Enthusiasm right now is dead. Build up as much goodwill as you can with these fans, offering a free ticket or just general admission. Hey, come watch Konsta Helenius. It's not Eichel. It's not a McDavid prospect, you know? Come watch Nikita Novikov. Come watch Scott Ratzlaff. Come on. Make it free to the fans. I kind of couldn't believe when I clicked it, just for the show's purposes. I wanted to say, like, hey, where you can get tickets and how you can go see the event. And I was kind of half expecting to click the link and just have, you just click it and you get the ticket and they send you a mobile one. That's it. It's just how it goes, general admission. And then I saw $11.80. I don't even know if that includes fees. Maybe are fees included in that? Okay, they are. It's a $10 ticket and then $1.80 for fees. But man, I don't want to go too far with it, but come on. Make the Prospects Challenge a free ticket for your fan base. By the way, the Sabres play Columbus. This is okay. Now I'm just noticing this now. It's not just $11.80 to watch the Sabres prospects. It's $11.80 to watch the other teams. If you want to go see, is there a single person in Buffalo that's going to do this? Are they charging the families this, by the way? Are they trying to get as much, every dollar out of the Bruins prospect families? It's $11.80 to go watch Bruins Penguins. The prospects at HarborCenter at noon on a Friday. It's $11.80 on Friday at 3:30 to go watch the Devils prospects against the Senators prospects. Come on, that's bad. Okay, I wasn't gonna go too far with the Sabres ones, but now that I'm just now noticing they are charging to go see other teams' prospects, I'm about to blow a gasket. I can't believe it. You can see I'm almost laughing at it though. It's like I can't. It's amazing. There's got to be. Is there a more reasonable explanation for why that's there than just they're trying to get $200 out of the families of the Devils and the Bruins when they play on Monday at 10 a.m. and it costs $12 to go see the game? I can't believe it. All right, break here before I get too far. We'll come back. I want to talk about the Red Wings. We've been rolling through the Atlantic Division, and to me, this is the other team, along with Ottawa, that is most closely tied to the Sabres, and the Sabres need to be better than that. When we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase, I'm so in awe right now. We are presented here on the show by FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. But we got a little something different for you because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game in the National Football League. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. If that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app. Use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday, 9:15. So that's coming up later this week. Pre-game moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be starting live tomorrow. View your account page now to learn more about your boost and visit FanDuel.com right now. Download America's #1 sportsbook. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listener every day. I am making sure I don't get distracted by this again. I am closing the tab that shows the ticket prices for the Sabres Prospect Challenge. Let's move on, shall we? Let's get to the 7th of our, well, I guess the Sabres count as one, so the 6th of our 7 teams that we are rolling through here in the Atlantic Division. Let's get to the Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings, who did finish above the Buffalo Sabres last year. They were a team that had a really hot start. And I'll take a little victory lap because maybe it was even the second year in a row where I looked at the Red Wings and thought, guys, this team is not nearly as good as their record. This is not a legitimately good team. And there was no real great reason to explain why they were winning, right? Like their goaltending was like and their scoring was and their defense was They were just kind of average at everything. And they won some close games, and that was enough for a time, but then they got exposed. The Red Wings finished the season, though, 41, 32, and 9. So NHL, they're above 500. In real world sports, they would be exactly 500, 41 losses, 41 wins, 91 points. Which actually, by the way, did tie them for that final playoff spot. I feel I don't remember if they were alive, though, on the final day or if they made that up on the final day. But anyways, they were very close. 1 point away from breaking their playoff drought and making the playoffs. +4 goal differential. The Sabres were 84 points +2 goal differential. I think for the last 3 years, these teams have not been that far off. The Sabres have finished above them twice in the standings. The Red Wings have finished above them once. The Red Wings are kind of like Ottawa for me, though. They've already kind of pushed their chips to the middle. They've made their trades. I'm going to stop making this point soon, though, because I've been making it for 2.5 years. And the Sabres, the longer they don't make the big moves, they made a few smaller moves this year, but the longer they don't make like a big wow move, the less I'm going to make this point, that the Red Wings spent their capital. They spent their draft assets, a lot of them. They spent their cap assets, and they have a team filled with a lot of guys that there's nothing wrong with this. You can still win this way, but they're just a different type of build. The Sabres built their team with prospects and paying guys as they came up, and the Red Wings went out and they acquired guys from out of town. If you look at their top 3 lines right now, and who they drafted and developed. Line 1 right now for Detroit would be Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, and Lucas Raymond. All right, they drafted Larkin and Raymond. They did not draft DeBrincat. That was a trade. They traded a bunch of stuff to go get him from Ottawa in a big trade. Line 2, they didn't draft a single one of them. JT Compher as the second-line center was an overpayment as a free agent contract. Nice player, but overpayment, which is fine. Patrick Kane, right, they brought him back. Vladimir Tarasenko, they signed in free agency. Nobody there. Third line, Jonathan Berggren, they did. Michael Rasmussen, they did. But the center, Andrew Kopp, they did not. That's another little bit of an overpayment free agent contract. So line 1 left wing, your whole second line, and third line center were all players you brought in from elsewhere. That doesn't mean they can't win doing that if they're good enough. It just means, you've kind of already done your moves. I don't know what your next move would be. Doesn't mean they can't make it again. Like it kind of limits them a little more than it would another team. So what is Detroit though? What are they? Because their offseason, other than bringing back Patrick Kane, which I didn't think was going to happen, and then also re-signing Vladimir Tarasenko, they did kind of have a quiet, let's just tinker with the roster type of offseason. Tinkering with a team, though, that did tie for a playoff spot last year. Really, the whole point on Detroit to get to is you're just waiting for the core young pieces to start taking monster steps forward. And that is really yet to happen in a big way. Nobody's even taken like the Dahlin step that he made 3 years ago. Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond. Lucas Raymond, though, already kind of did. It might be more about Seider. Seider becoming a better defenseman in his own end. He did put up some points last year, 42 points in 82 games. Did play over 22 minutes a night. Raymond is the one, he did get above 70 points. So he's the one that, like, I do feel like there's another gear there, though. Like, I really liked that guy as a prospect when he came out. And I think there's a little more in there still for Lucas Raymond. Sider, though, just to get to more on him, he's the one. He's got to be their number one defenseman. And to be their number one defenseman, got to be better in your own end. A lot better. You need to be someone that could be out there at the end of games, closing games out. And Sider last year at Evolving Hockey was a 25th overall percentile defenseman. Really bad. Why? Wasn't his offensive game. He's got that. 84th percentile offensively for a defenseman in the NHL last year. When looking at his goals above replacement is usually the number they look at for the charts. Great. Defensively, first percentile. Like the worst defensive defenseman in hockey last year by his advanced metrics. I'm not watching every game. You know, I'm going to actually, I meant to tease this at the top. We're going to do a roundtable coming up this weekend that'll be available to you next week with me, the guys from Locked On Red Wings, the guys from Locked On Senators, and Locked On Canadiens, kind of the bottom depths of the Atlantic Division. We're all going to get together and kind of go through it. And I want to talk to the Red Wings guys about this. Sider, tell me, is it this bad defensively? Because the numbers say he stinks defensively, and it's got to get a lot better. So I'll get confirmation for you this weekend, and then the show will be out for you coming up next week. But that's the guy. That's the guy that needs to take the big step forward. And then what do you have? I think in Detroit, like you're kind of limited, though. Like I just don't see the upside. I see more upside from Ottawa and still the Sabres than I do the Red Wings. I think the Red Wings could be a playoff team this year, and it would not stun me. But I wouldn't bet it. And teams that are more likely to jump up into the big three, I think the Sabres and the Senators are both more likely than that. When we come back, what about some of the expectations of the Red Wings in the betting lines, and also comparing their roster straight up to the Sabres? A little bit on that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented here on the show by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Wrapping these up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, be sure to check out our sister show, Locked On Bills, with our man Joe Marino, who will have you all covered going into Bills and Dolphins, all the pregame stuff that you need for Thursday Night Football. Joe's got it over at Locked On Bills. Also, be sure to check out Locked On NHL as we creep closer to the training camps and the preseason. The Detroit Red Wings, just wrapping things up on them quickly, expectations, and also I want to talk about their coach, because biggest difference to me, the rosters, there's differences in the roster. Expectations are not that different. 90.5 points is the over-under for the Red Wings. 88.5 is still the over-under for the Sabres. We're talking about a 2-point difference. It's basically the same between these two teams. The Sabres are going into their first year with Lindy Ruff. Coach, I talked about this the other day. I'm not really sure what to expect from if they were to fire Adams after a year. Would Lindy stick around? Like, I feel like I would guess he would, but I don't know. The Red Wings have one of the least inspiring coaches to me in the NHL. Derek Lalonde is still their coach. This is his third training camp with the Red Wings. 80 points in year one, 91 points in year two. Like, all right, fine, right? The expectations or the point totals are not that bad. They're kind of Don Granato-esque so far. But it's just they play a blah style. He doesn't really carry himself with a lot of emotion. He didn't really come from a big, background. He was a USHL guy that was then the assistant coach for Tampa for a few years. I just not a coach that really inspires me. And I think he's probably top 3 first coach to be fired odds. Those aren't out yet. But if I were setting the odds on first coach fired, he might even be my betting favorite. If the Red Wings start poor with that team they've got over there, which is a pretty veteran team, what's the move? They fire their coach. NHL, you fire coaches a lot, but he would be, to me, one of the favorites to be the first coach fired. What are the Sabres better at, though, than the Detroit Red Wings? I think the Sabres are better on the blue line than the Detroit Red Wings. The Seaman, Evans, Edvinsson, Jeff Petrie, Oli Mata, Eric Gustafsson. It's kind of an older, slower type of blue line in Detroit. I like the top end right now, and Moritz Seider's not a Dahlin at all yet. So until that happens, Dahlin's a huge advantage. I think Power and Byram and Samuelson are big advantages over their 2, 3, 4. And I even like the Sabres bottom 6 better. I think the Sabres blue line blows Detroit's out of the water. I do like the Red Wings up front, though, better. I like them at center better, even though they overpaid Compher and Kopp, whatever. They're good players. I like their depth of scoring better in Detroit. Goaltending, I actually like the Sabres better, though. So I take 2 of the 3. Ville Husso's still the goalie in Detroit. He's fine, but or Cam Talbot. Cam Talbot now is in Detroit. I would take the Sabres goaltending over the Red Wings. I would take their blue line over the Red Wings. I would take the Red Wings scoring over the Sabres. But I'm giving 2 of the 3 to the Sabres, so I would give them a narrow edge this year in the standings. I think the Sabres will finish above the Red Wings in the standings when it's all set and done in 2024. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Much more coming tomorrow on the Prospects Challenge, which is getting closer, coming up on Friday against the Blue Jackets. And hey, for the cool low price of $12, you could go at noon to see the Bruins prospects play the Penguins prospects. So good luck to you if you're deciding to do that. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.